While you were watching playoff games, the Eagles decided to make their first offseason move by quietly firing Sean Desai, although the person who reportedly pulled the trigger on this move might really surprise you. Also, hear why Bob Cooter is a name you should start getting familiar with as a possible OC replacement, as there is a brand new report showing just how bad Brian Johnson was for Jalen Hurts. This is such a bad report. It's going to make you want Johnson out of Philadelphia faster than Jason Kelce can shotgun a beer on national TV. Boy, there's a lot going on. I'm Thomas Mott. This is The Thomas Mott Show. Well, while you're watching Jason Kelce, I guess, do bowling ball shots in the Bills parking lot, and then, of course, shotgunning beers in Taylor Swift's box on Sunday night. Also, look at poor Kylie Kelce here. She's just horrified. Philadelphia dropped some major coaching updates, starting with the firing of their defensive coordinator, or, I guess, former defensive coordinator. Either way, Sean Desai, he's gone in Philadelphia. Now, a couple of things right off the bat. This is not a big surprise. Desai was demoted following the Birds' loss to the Cowboys in early December, and seemingly, what did he really do the remainder of the year? Probably not much. What's more interesting for me is the tweet from Jeff McClain that said that, quote, Nick Sirianni did the firing, NFL sources said. Another indication that the Eagles head coach will likely be returning. More on that later. The Desai departure was obvious, as will be Patricia likely joining him. More changes will be coming to Sirianni's staff. Wait, so does this mean that Sirianni did the firing and is also going to stay as the head coach? Well, I guess not officially, yes, but yeah, he's probably going to stay. And if you're like me, who was hoping that Nick Sirianni would be let go, I think it's safe to say it's time to just go ahead and accept the fact that he's going to be the head coach in Philadelphia, barring a major shock Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of this week. Now, this, of course, was echoed by multiple reports late Friday night, saying that the Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie told head coach Nick Sirianni that to keep his job, he must fire Matt Patricia and Sean Desai, per team sources. Lurie walked out intrigued by Nick's plan regarding potential coordinators. A name included Denard Wilson and one former head coach who spent time with the team. I'm told they continue to talk while leaving the meeting, which never happens with Lurie. Okay, a lot to unpack there. First off, maybe by the time you're watching this, or maybe tomorrow or the next day, Matt Patricia will officially be fired. He will be gone. But remember, he's not officially the defensive coordinator, just kind of a consultant who was eventually given the play calling duties and took them over, so they don't need to fire him yet in order to start searching for defensive coordinators, hence why Desai is kind of the first domino that needed to be dropped on what is a very long list of changes. Can I be honest for a second? I kind of have mixed feelings about Desai going. Don't get me wrong, I definitely wanted him and his stupid soft coverage scheme out of Philadelphia after just the first couple of weeks that I saw it. But we also can't deny that Eagles defense was at least serviceable under Desai versus the absolute atrocious disaster that it was under Matt Patricia. I mean, we got to give credit where credit is due. Desai had wins against Dallas. He had wins against the Kansas City Chiefs. Even, of course, the Buffalo Bills, that dramatic overtime win in Philadelphia. Still, Philly needs an entire defensive makeover. They need a fresh scheme. They need to start making life difficult for opposing quarterbacks instead of just saying, hey, go ahead and carve us up in the middle of the field. We're going to give you wide open targets because we're a really nice defense. Now, as far as replacements at defensive coordinator, Philadelphia has already been hard at work, according to The Athletic's Diana Rossini, who said Sunday night that, as expected, the Eagles fired defensive coordinator Sean Desai. Over the last week, though, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni have been reaching out to available coordinators, including former Giants DC Wink Martindale and former Falcons defensive coordinator Ryan Neilsen. There are more, end quote. Okay, these are already two very different defensive schemes from where Philadelphia will be coming from, starting, of course, with Wink. And everybody knows what's going on with Wink Martindale. He's the blitz-happy defensive coordinator of the New York Giants, and honestly, he's a very strong candidate. He has a ton of experience. He's not somebody who's probably going to get poached to be a head coach, even if the Eagles do well in 2024, and he's a name that a lot of people will recognize as a blitz-happy man-coverage defensive coordinator, and I think Philadelphia Eagle fans are going to be all for it. But can I be honest? Ryan Neilsen gets me really, really excited. If you don't know who he is, technically, he's still the defensive coordinator in Atlanta. All the Falcons are going to clean shop and hire Bill Belichick and do a lot of other changes, so they are going to let him interview elsewhere. That's why he's trying to find a DC job instead of a head coaching job. But he's only 44 years old and just finished up his first year in Atlanta. The Falcons finishing 18th in points allowed, 12th in EPA, 5th in success rate, and number 1 in rush EPA/play. And that's a defense with very little talent that easily overachieved in 2023. Now, if you do a little bit more diving in on Ryan, he's a defensive line guru. I mean, he's known for his defensive line play, and he's an absolute man coverage phenom. He loves man coverage. Both of these guys, both Wink and Ryan Neilsen, would be massive upgrades, at least in my opinion, or at least massive changes from Desai and Matt Patricia. Now, one more DC name to keep an eye on, mentioned it a little bit earlier, is former Eagles DB coach and current DC in Baltimore, Denard Wilson. Now, personally, I would love for Denard Wilson to come back to Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia should have hired him this past offseason to make him the actual official defensive coordinator, and who knows where Philadelphia would be right now had they went ahead and done that. But if you're Denard Wilson, right now you have a AFC title game spot locked. You probably are the best team in the NFL. Your defense is balling out. I mean, Ronald Darby is a Raven. He's playing very, very well. That secondary in Baltimore looks fantastic. Why would you take a lateral move as the Baltimore DC and come to Philadelphia, a team that really didn't want you because they passed up on you last year? I'd be very surprised if Wilson were to go ahead and do that. My guess is he stays one more year in Baltimore and then tries to get an OC job maybe in 2025. All right, you have all that? Did you take notes? I mean, there's a lot going on with the DC spot. Let's move over to the offensive coordinator side of the ball and Brian Johnson, who, according to Jeff McClain, is currently interviewing, obviously, for head coaching openings. We've told you that the past couple of days. So the Eagles won't do anything to hinder his chances, but he could be the next major domino to fall. Per Mike Garfolo, he mentioned Colts offensive coordinator Bob Cooter as a possible replacement, which honestly makes sense. First off, Philadelphia gets draft picks due to the Rooney Rule in both the next two drafts if someone hires Brian Johnson as a head coach, but even if someone doesn't, which after you hear this report that I'm about to read you about Brian Johnson's time in Philadelphia, I'd be surprised if he goes somewhere other than getting just straight up let go from Philadelphia. Listen to this. A recent Fox Sports article shed further light on the offensive issues, saying there have been a lot of frustrations with offensive coordinator Brian Johnson's play calling late in the season, including his pass-happy approach against the Bucs, even though Hurts was playing with a dislocated finger on his throwing hand and without number one wide receiver A.J. Brown. Johnson was Jalen Hurts' choice to succeed Steichen when he left, but some speculation the relationship has soured too. One team source says Hurts audibled and freelanced more frequently late in the season, and that he and Johnson rarely seem to be on the same page. Hurts regressed badly during the 6-game slide, throwing just 6 touchdown passes with 5 interceptions, and the Eagles got away from their dangerous run-pass option attack as Johnson shied away from the running game in general. In fact, Hurts unbelievably had just 1 carry in the loss to the Bucs that didn't appear to be a design run. Which is no wonder that Jalen Hurts seemingly seemed frustrated this entire season. I mean, you pan to him on the sideline, he'd be upset. He'd go to a press conference, and he would try to be like, everything's fine. We all kind of went, you're either injured, you hate the play calling, or it's a mixture of both. Now, you can all put the blame on Nick Sirianni. A lot of us have thought this is Nick Sirianni's problem, but apparently Jeffrey Lurie at least believes that Sirianni is not the major problem, or it wouldn't seem to make a lot of sense to bring him back as the head coach. Instead, it seems like Brian Johnson is going to go ahead and be your offensive coordinator scapegoat. Now, the name that McClain mentioned as a possible OC replacement is Bob Cooter. It's a name you've probably heard, not just because it's a fun name to go ahead and say, but because he is the current Colts offensive coordinator under Shane Steichen, which is a good sign. Although, unlike Sirianni, Steichen actually calls plays as the de facto OC in Indy. But of course, before helping Indy finish 11th in scoring with Gardner Minshew the majority of the way at quarterback this year, he previously worked for the Eagles as an OC consultant in 2021. That was, of course, Sirianni's first year at the helm, before joining the Jaguars as a passing game coordinator in 2022, helping oversee a career year for quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Cooter also worked as an OC for the Lions from 2016 to 2018, helping guide Matt Stafford and company to a playoff appearance under then-coach Jim Caldwell. He also served as an offensive assistant with the Broncos in 2013 when Peyton Manning won NFL MVP and Denver advanced to the Super Bowl. It might sound like a lateral move for Cooter, who, again, is already an offensive coordinator, but getting to call plays is a big deal. It's one of the main reasons why, say, Eric Bieniemy struggled so hard to get hired out of Kansas City, because it was always Andy Reid calling the plays for Mahomes and not Eric Bieniemy. Now, of course, Sirianni got hired out of Indy without calling any of the plays because that was Shane Steichen's sort of thing, and we all know how that turned out. But I do think there's at least a chance that Cooter is a very interesting name and probably one to keep an eye on as Philadelphia's OC search gets underway once the Brian Johnson head coaching interviews kind of start to diminish. Now, the final name as we wrap up here to keep an eye on is Frank Reich. It was mentioned way earlier in the video, but the Eagles are looking at a former head coach to be an HC, which is basically only Frank Reich. There's some other options we'll talk about in a later video this week, but Frank Reich is someone who's already been tied to Philadelphia. I've told you that he's been working and at least mentoring Nick Sirianni. It'll depend if he actually wants to come back to the NFL because he's had 2 failed coaching stints, is making a ton of money from the Colts and the Panthers, and so he might just want to, I don't know, buy a boat, hang out, and just be a dad and be a husband and be an old man, I guess, at least in the NFL stage. But right now, keep an eye on Reich. If he wanted to return, I'd be very surprised if Philadelphia would not at least be interested in interviewing their former offensive coordinator. Now, this is all fluid. Maybe by the time you watch this show, things have changed. It's going to be a crazy week. If you have not subbed, if you have not hit that red subscribe button, along with the notification bell, I highly encourage you here, because when things happen, when things, inevitably break, we're going to have it first here in the Thomas Mott Show. That is my promise and guarantee to you guys. I'm Thomas Mott, breaking it all down. This has been the Thomas Mott Show.